Hello and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are playing Kingdom Come Deliverance and we are going to be discussing the characters in this game that we are likely to see in the soon-to-arrive sequel, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. I just figured it would be a good idea to cover this before the game comes out, for those of you who have never played Kingdom Come Deliverance, or those of you for whom it's been quite a while. So let's just dive on in and get discussing. But before we get to that, if you haven't yet purchased Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I have a solution for that. Currently, Fanatical is running a 10% off deal for pre-orders, and if you use my affiliate link, which will be in the pinned comment and the description of this video, you can get 10% off your purchase of any version of the game, and I even get a little kickback, so it's a win-win. So if you have not purchased the game yet, be sure to do so through my affiliate link. But now, back to this video. So, starting us off, we have Henry of Skalitz, our main character, the humble adoptive son of a village blacksmith, turned envoy and squire to local lords. He grew up in Skalitz, a royal mining settlement in the Rattay-Sasau region. That was being administered by a nobleman named Radzig Kobyla, who is a loyalist to King Wenceslaus IV and also the royal hetman. Henry lived in Skalitz his whole life, learning the trade of his adoptive father Martin and becoming a blacksmith apprentice. He had a sweetheart named Bianca and friends like Yaroslav the guardsman, Matthew and Fritz the town troublemakers, and Teresa the miller's daughter. That is until Skalitz was attacked, burned to the ground, and both of his parents and most of his friends and neighbors were murdered by Cuman mercenaries in the service of King Sigismund of Hungary. From there on, Henry served Radzig and the other local lords in investigating the conflicts in the local area and routing out bandits, counterfeiters, robber barons, corruption, and fighting in several military conflicts, including Pribyslavitz, Vranikilfort, and the siege of Talmberg Castle. Henry infiltrated a monastery to find a murderer, snuck into enemy camps to spy and sabotage their operations, befriended a local priest to learn the secrets of a bandit, cured a plague in Merhojed, teamed up with a German knight to stop an underground counterfeit ring, investigated local heretics and village women doing witchcraft, and romanced both Teresa, the miller's daughter, and Lady Stephanie, a local lord's wife. He did all of this before leaving for Trotsky Castle as the guard of Lord Hans Capon of Perkstein, as envoys of Margrave Jobst of Moravia, attempting to form an alliance against Sigismund with some of the League of Lords. Now, with the main character out of the way, we can move on to the other characters from the first game that we already know will be in the sequel, or that it's highly likely that they will be in the sequel. Let's start with Hans Capon. He's a young, bold, brash, and arrogant nobleman from Rattay. The entire Rattay fiefdom belonged to his father, Jan Tacek, who died when Hans was quite young. So it was decided that Sir Hanush, one of the lords of Leipa, and a distant cousin to Hans Capon, would administer the fiefdom, and take over as Hans Capon's guardian and mentor. Hans Capon has never been responsible, preferring hunting and cavorting with bathhouse wenches and drunks in the local taverns to the responsibilities of a nobleman. He and Henry got off on the wrong foot, with Henry beating Hans in an archery tournament, then a sparring match, and finally attempting to throw Hans out of a tavern at night because it was closing. This led to a fistfight and an angry Sir Hanush ordering Hans to take Henry hunting as his page. On this hunting trip, Henry and Hans bond. Henry beats Hans in a rabbit hunting competition, and Hans attempts to kill a wild boar with a bowshot, and chases the wounded animal into the clutches of a band of Cumans who overpower and capture Hans. Henry rescues Hans and returns him to Rattay, earning the pitiful mare, Pebbles, as a reward as his own personal horse. After this, Henry and Hans party together at the bathhouse and become real friends. Then they participate together in the siege of Talmberg, where they conduct a stealth infiltration at night, which of course fails, seeing Hans shot in the ass with an arrow, and having Henry once again save his life by getting him over the wall and back to the siege camp. The next time we see them interacting is when Jobst of Moravia sends the two of them on their mission to Trotsky Castle. Moving on, we have Father Godwin, the local priest in Ujits, one of the villages that falls within the Rattay fiefdom. Henry interacts with him only a handful of times. He is not an ordinary priest, though. The first time Henry comes into contact with Godwin is during Henry's investigation of the massacre at the Neuhof stud farm. During this investigation, he gets to know Godwin, attempts to get Godwin to break the sacramental seal of confession, and therefore tell Henry what he knows about the bandit group. Godwin and Henry drink all night in the tavern, get thrown out, get into a fistfight with the bailiff and his men, then continue drinking back at Father Godwin's rectory, and they end up ringing the church bells at night and sleeping with some women of ill repute. In the morning, Godwin is too hungover, so he has Henry deliver a sermon, posing as a scholar from Prague who preaches on the teachings of Master Jan Hus. After his sermon, Godwin tells Henry what he wanted to know, and Henry is able to continue his investigation. It is also revealed to us through conversations with Godwin, as well as Sir Radzig and Sir Hanush about him, that Godwin is no ordinary priest. He is an expert swordsman with military experience who fought in major European wars in the past. We already know he is quite the sinner, and it's possible that he is from a noble family, although he does not talk about it. We also investigate two other things for Godwin in the first game. The first thing is a local group of women experimenting with hallucinogenic ointments and dancing in the woods at night, otherwise known as witchcraft. Godwin doesn't want to burn anyone, but he does want it to stop. This investigation pretty much always goes poorly for me. The next time we interact with Godwin is when Henry investigates a local group of heretics known as the Waldensians. If all goes according to Godwin's plan, nobody gets in trouble and nobody gets hurt, despite the fact that the Waldensians are in fact a heretical sect that, per the laws of the land and the church, should be stopped. Father Godwin is represented as a man of the people and a follower of Jan Hus, as well as a drunk and a master swordsman. Our next character is Jobst of Moravia. He is the cousin of King Wenceslaus and King Sigismund. He is part of the Luxembourg family and the Margrave of Moravia, making him politically one of the most powerful figures in the greater Bohemian area at the time. He helped with the first abduction of King Wenceslaus and was an early supporter of Sigismund, but as is his personality and reputation, then later switched sides and started to oppose Sigismund. It's possible that this is related to Sigismund's imprisonment of Jobst's brother Prokop, but more likely just that Jobst sensed the shifting political winds and realized he had more to gain from opposing Sigismund than from supporting him. Jobst is not in the first game very much, just at the end where it is revealed that he is formalizing an alliance of nobles against Sigismund. He wants to get into contact with a powerful lord, Otto von Burgau, and that is why he sends Henry and Sir Capon there as messengers, carrying an important letter. Other than that, we do hear about him through others, such as the fact that he is untrustworthy and likes to switch sides, and that's pretty much all we know about him from the first game. Next we have John II of Liechtenstein. He is a supporter of Jobst, and we also see him only at the very end of the game. He's a spy and a courtier in the service of Jobst of Moravia. He's from the Liechtenstein family, who are important nobles holding lands in Moravia, Bohemia, and Austria. He is young and politically astute, but that's pretty much all we ever know about him. Moving on to Sir Radzig Kobyla, or good old Seagull Mare, the true father of Henry of Skalitz. He is, at the time of this game, the hetman of King Wenceslaus, which in simple terms is a type of regional, or in some cases, grand military commander. This gives him the authority under the king to raise armies, call on local nobles for men and military resources, and conduct military campaigns with royal authority. He loses his seat at Skalitz at the beginning of the game, and spends the remainder of his time there operating out of the lower castle in Ratay or various military camps around the map. He is a lesser noble who appears to be favored by Wenceslaus because they are friends, as he does not come from any important family or lineage. At one point, he impregnated Henry's mother, and as a favor to him, Martin would marry her and raise Henry as his own son. Radzig and Martin are apparently friends from the past, but that is never really elaborated on. Radzig takes Henry into his service after Skalitz and sends him on various missions throughout the game. They fight together at Pribyslavitz and Vranik until Radzig is captured and held hostage in Talmberg. Sir Radzig is rescued and ransomed after Henry, Hans, Divish, and Hanush take back Talmberg Castle, and Radzig and Henry ride back to Ratay 2-up, like the Brothers Templar. From there, it only makes sense to have a brief discussion of the other prominent local lord, and that is Sir Hanush of Leipa. As I already said, he is the guardian lord of the Ratay fiefdom, administering it for Sir Hans until Hans Capon comes of age. He is loud, brash, cannot read, and uses a mace in battle. He actually reminds me a lot of King Robert Baratheon from A Song of Ice and Fire. He seems to like Henry and gives him several missions, like hunting down a robber baron related to his captain of the guard, Captain Bernard. Hanush is the one who sent Henry to investigate the Waldensians in Ujits. Hanush is also the one who gave pebbles to Henry, and Hanush is the one that is constantly yelling at Hans Capon for not acting nobly. He appears to be a supporter of King Wenceslaus, and as representative for the Lords of Leipa, he is actually fairly important politically, as the Leipa family is a large and influential branch of the Ronov family, who are one of the greatest powers in Bohemia at the time. So all this makes it fairly obvious why Jobst decided to come to Ratay at the end of the game. More than anything else, he was ensuring the support of the Lords of Leipa for his cause. Moving on to our baddies, let's start with Istvan Toth, a Hungarian noble in the service of King Sigismund of Hungary. He fought with Sigismund at the Battle of Nicopolis, and is currently waging a guerrilla war against Wenceslaus's supporters in the Ratay area. His goal is to destabilize them all and eventually seize the fiefdom for himself. He attempts this through counterfeiting groschen, causing chaos, disrupting military supply lines, namely by killing horses at the local stud farms, and eventually through military operation. He was in charge of the bandit armies being assembled at Pribyslavitz and Vranik. He is the one who takes Talmberg Castle through a ruse and holds Lady Stephanie and Sir Radzig hostage. He is Henry's main antagonist in the game, as he is the one in possession of Henry's sword, the last sword that Martin forged, which was supposed to be for Sir Radzig. Henry spends the entire game trying to get this sword back, only to see it slip away in the end when Istvan Toth escapes. At one point, Istvan recognizes Henry and captures him, and has him beaten at Vranik. This is where Henry learns that Sir Radzig is actually his father, as Istvan reveals this to him, mocking Henry for not knowing, and revealing that Sir Radzig apparently tells just about anybody who will listen that Henry is actually his bastard son. Except, of course, Henry. Suffice it to say, Henry does not like this guy. Our next bad guy is Erik of Bumfancy. He is Istvan Toth's right-hand guy. He's the one in charge of the build-up at Vranik, and he wears shiny white brigandine armor. I'm sure this was supposed to be somewhat thematic, as Istvan's other captain, Runt, who led the build-up at Pribyslavitz, wore black brigandine armor. But anyway, Erik was an orphan of some war, likely the Nicopolis campaign, and he was sort of adopted by Istvan Toth, who apparently took pity on him as he too was orphaned at one point. Their relationship is somewhat confusing and very messy, as apparently it's a weird hybrid of father and son and also gay lovers. A lot to unpack there, but it's only background noise for the story. He recruits Henry into his band at Vranik, and only after Istvan recognizes and reveals Henry does Erik then capture and torture Henry. Later, Erik is captured at Talmberg after he led a failed assault with the men of Havelmedic of Waldeck to attempt to flank the siege camp and burn the trebuchet that they were building there. Here, Henry interrogates Erik and learns of the strange relationship between Istvan and him. The group attempts to use him as a bargaining chip with Istvan to free the noble hostages. This enrages Istvan, and in the end, after the retaking of Talmberg, Erik is swapped for Lady Stephanie, and Radzig is released at the border of the fief as Erik and Istvan ride away, off into the sunset together. We also should discuss two more antagonists from the first game, and they are King Sigismund of Hungary and Markvart von Aulitz. Let's start with Sigismund. He was only present for a few seconds in the first game. He is the half-brother of King Wenceslaus IV, he is the king of Hungary and Croatia at this point, and also wants to become the king of Bohemia. He has very little money after losing much of it in a failed attempt at the Nicopolis campaign, and so he has an army made up mostly of Cuman mercenaries who live in Hungary and work for plunder. He plans to pay for his conquest and the wars with Bohemian silver. That's why he sacked Skalitz, and that's why historically he also set his sights on Kuttenberg. He isn't in the game much, but due to the fact that his attack on Skalitz led to the death of Henry's friends and family, he is of course the enemy. Next we have Markvart von Aulitz, another enemy that appears briefly at the beginning of the game and then never again. He was Sigismund's right-hand man in Bohemia. He commanded the army at Skalitz and personally killed Henry's father, Martin, in Skalitz, before watching his Cuman mercenaries slaughter Henry's mother in a terribly brutal manner. And that's it. That is all we see of him in Kingdom Come Deliverance. He is never present again for the entire remainder of the game. He has a super German sounding name, but to the best of our knowledge in the game, and from a real historical point of view, he was a Bohemian nobleman from Prague who served as the Prague Burgrave under Wenceslaus and was in charge of the Prague militia at the time that this game takes place in history. Finally, we have Martin, Henry's adoptive blacksmith father, who raised him under the watchful eyes of Henry's biological father, Sir Radzig. Martin will obviously not appear in the second game, as he dies at the very beginning of the first one. However, we do learn throughout the first game that Martin was a swordsmith in Kuttenberg before settling in Skalitz, and that he also at some point had military adventures, which explains how he became such a skilled swordsman, and possibly why he and Radzig were friends, and why Sir Radzig asked Martin to raise his bastard son as his own. So even though Martin will not be in KCD2, it's important to know that everything we know about his backstory is centered around the town of Kuttenberg, and that is where a good chunk of the second game will take place. So I'm sure that information will be important. Martin is noted to be a master swordsmith, and several people in the first game comment how strange it is to find him making nails and horseshoes in a backwater like Skalitz. So I think we can expect his reputation to be somewhat important in the second game. But I think that's everyone. Everyone else in the first game is either dead or, in my opinion, highly unlikely to appear in the sequel. Most of Henry's friends were peasants, so the likelihood of seeing them so far away would not make any sense. and the other knights and nobles have responsibilities that make it unlikely that they would be trouncing around the countryside for no reason. So I doubt we'll see Sebastian von Berg, Sir Divish, Captain Bernard, Sir Robard, Tobias Fafar, Zabishek, Teresa, Miller Peshek, Nightingale, or even Fritz and Matthew in the sequel. So that's all for today. I hope this video was entertaining and or informative, but thanks for watching and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.